Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of the Teacher's Surgery, where we have real and relatable conversation that is informed by parents and teachers and young people like yourself. And even if you're not in that age group or that demographic, you're still a part of our tribe, so welcome. I'd love to welcome our guests today, our teachers, who will be answering our question that has been sent in by a teacher, and a fairly, I would say young teacher who's probably new to her career, starting out. And her question was, as a teacher, how do I identify signs of child abuse? So I think I'm going to go with Amber, because Amber's got her smile on her face, and Amber always has loads to share.
Well, child abuse, it's broad. It's a wide topic, broad. I think you've got your beginning years of being a teacher, you're taught to identify certain aspects, maybe the way the child behaves in terms of their emotion, their appearance. So if their collar is dirty or if they seem unhappy, and it has to be something out of the ordinary. So obviously if it's one time, you can talk to them and say, is everything okay? But if it's continuous, you start to wonder, you know, is this a form of neglect? Do you need to go a step further and report it to the safeguarding officer or contact the parents and bring them in? But then there's this other side where I think culture is an aspect where people think, oh, it's child abuse if a child is prostrating. Like, for example, me, I'm Nigerian, and I would see parents coming with their children, and if they're misbehaving, you know, the parent will say, prostrate out of respect. Or they might be pleading with the teacher saying, I'm really, really sorry. And the teacher would look and say, why are you making them kneel on the floor? Come off the floor, that's abuse. But in a sense, it's not abuse, it's just a form of what we do out of respect.
In culturally?
Yeah.
Does anyone else want to chime in? Clement, what about you?
Yeah, she pretty much nailed it on, to be fair. There are many signs, and it's wide and it's broad. So even little things you can identify, you know, are they coming in late? Are they having, you know, breakfast in the morning? Are they wearing the same sort of clothing? Is there a hygiene problem, you know? And I feel like it can be quite hard to pinpoint, because sometimes you may not discover that in one lesson.
Sure. It
might be, you know, across a few lessons, or depending on, you know, where the student has come from, you may need to speak to a previous teacher or the previous school if there were like incidences beforehand. So those are a few of the things that you can spot out. And I guess I also want to highlight that, you know, it will be very important to have conversations with the parents as well. I feel like the parents really need to be involved, and so that the child can see that both the parent and the teacher are as one, and we're trying to support, you know, the child and help them develop or make changes, etc. So.
And I think we touched on it in season 1, where sometimes your child goes to school without breakfast, they ran out of the house, I don't want cereal, they've gone, oh, I don't eat, their favourite excuse, I don't eat breakfast, I'm not hungry at that time of the morning. And as a parent, like, you don't know that someone's thinking, why is this child never coming to school?
Sometimes
and had
the parents
breakfast?
Already gone
the
to
parents,
work.
You've gone to work, exactly, you've said.
One thing I want to say, Kelly, I want to touch on the hygiene aspect.
Yeah.
You know, obviously that's the massive indicator, but sometimes, you know, you look at the parents themselves, their appearance, their self is not great, you know. Sometimes some people don't know, they don't realise that, you know, their clothes, they need to change it or they need to have a bath. You know, it might be common knowledge to some, and to others it might just be that's how they were raised, you know.
And equally, people experience hygiene poverty where they don't have enough money to buy washing up liquids.
Exactly. Like imagine, Kelly, like you have 3 kids, for example, and you don't have a washing machine at home. You have to pay out that money to go to the laundrette and wash your child's clothes. You will put all the colours together, red, black, blue, white, everything together because money. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, obviously appearance, it's good to look presentable and stuff, but people go on how they've been taught, how they've been raised, you know. So
can I just add as well and say, sometimes as well, I feel like the parents you know, as Clement said, that we should involve the parents. They don't even know what's happening because they're so busy that they kind of assume that their child knows what to do. Because in my years of teaching, I remember a child coming in my tutor group, and I said to him, you know, I noticed that your collar is a bit black and it's been like that for 2 days now. It was uncomfortable to say it to him, but it was one of those ones. I love him as his teacher, so I'm going to tell him the truth, because I don't want him at the start of year 7 to be labelled as, oh, but do you remember when you had that collar? You're the one who's the dirty one. Because they will do that as they grow up. They'll say, oh, shush you, because remember what you were like in year 7 with your dirty collar. That's what. And
then bullying will take place.
Can I just ask you guys something? Like in my case, like the kids in reception, they'll come in with chocolate on their face and sticky fingers. Now, would you class that as a sign of abuse, or just, I don't care, just go to school? Because when they come in like that, I get the wet tissue and I wipe their face and I wash their hands. But what would you class that as abuse?
Well, that's what I was going to say with that boy. I didn't class that as abuse, because when I spoke to him, he said, my mum's a nurse, she works late. And I just assumed, oh, it's a case where she's assumed he knows what to do. So I told him, when you go home, just tell your mum that, you know, you need a clean shirt. And he came in the next day with the shirt. It wasn't clean. You could see, you know, the drip stains of soap. He had attempted to clean it in the sink, and I worked it out like that. So then I had to call mum and say, Mum, you know, this is what happened. Please, can we work together? But after that, she was just like, oh, I feel so ashamed. I'm so sorry. This happened at home. This is happening in our life. I came to realize that, oh my gosh, she's going through a really hard time right now, and she's relying on us to support her. So I didn't really class that as abuse. But with your one, it depends, really.
It depends, because I wouldn't necessarily class it as abuse. But if it was consistent and repetitive, then possibly, you know, possibly. But listen, you know, as we've all kind of stated, like, we're humans, we're busy, parents are working, you know, the odd off occasion, you know, it can happen. But
or
again,
maybe the child eats breakfast on the way to school, they eat toast whilst they're walking to school or something like that. They don't have the time.
You know what she's made me realise as well? It seems like there's the knowing that you're abusing, and then there's the unknowing.
The unknowing.
Yeah, so it's like, did you do it intentionally, or is it a case of, oh, you didn't mean to, it's, you know.
I know that look. That means the waiting. Keep building up, keep building up, keep building up, keep building up. He's gonna let go. Go in the car.
I guess from my perspective, it's to that teacher, for instance, it's understanding, like, not to make assumptions. Because a lot of the times it's like we try to make assumptions, and our own personal biases creeps into things in terms of what you've seen or how you were raised and what you think is abuse. So if we're differentiating it, let's break it down. You've got physical abuse, all right? You've got the abuse, and we were talking about neglect, consistent neglect anyway, because every so often, yes, you've gone to work early and you've already spoken to your child in terms of how to present themselves, but without you being there, they haven't. And so, but if that's happening consistently, then let's have that conversation. You're now talking about, nobody really speaks about this, the emotional abuse that's potentially happening, and some of the disruptive behavior that you are now experiencing in your class might be a residue of that emotional abuse that's coming from home type of thing. So that displacement energy is now being translated somewhere, you know. So it's understanding all of these things, but I think there has to be a system in place where all teachers can now check their personal biases at the door and have a consistent format that you can have a conversation, you can look at this, and we can say, yes, we're reading off the same hymn sheet in regards to this is exactly how we identify physical abuse, so these are the signs that we are looking for, not just based on our preconceived assumptions, because there can be an element of racial bias, there could be an element of classism, depending on where you've grown up type of thing. So I think we need to be conscious of these things before we throw out that word abuse very flippantly.
Absolutely.
Would you think smacking a child is abuse as well? Because
chastising is not illegal. It's supposed to be done moderately. Some people don't believe in it, full stop. Others still use it as some form of discipline. But it's all within reason. Like, it shouldn't now be disproportionate with how you are now disciplining your child, if that's the method you're choosing to use. Personally, I don't subscribe to that in terms of how I'm raising my daughters, for instance, but other people might still want to do that. So, but if you are now bringing out the belt because the child dropped a cup, for instance, it's I think that's abuse.
It just happened to me. That's cool.
You know, just walking around with a sellotape on the cup in your hand to make sure you don't drop the cup.
It's the plate.
Walking around in fear.
I think
that qualifies as
You
abuse.
see how we're laughing at this? Really and truly, our children come and tell us little things like this, and it can be uncomfortable sometimes because you're like, I can relate because I know what you're going through because that's what our lives, you know, being reflected through them. But then at the same time, it's like, be careful who you're telling this to because it'll put your parents in a lot of trouble.
Just one phone call.
You know?
Because again, it's down,
understanding.
It's down to that sort of culture, mentality and understanding. So obviously, and I think young people understand the differences as well, and they know when they can play their parents against the system and know what could potentially get their parents in trouble anyway. So it's, I think some of them are fully aware with that.
All right, guys, you know what time it is. Secret question time. Oh, we got blue, pink, just like how the sofa is. Hey. Not that I believe in like gender or color bias, you know. I'm just putting my bias at the door. I'm gonna let the mama to be in blue pick. Oh, she picked that.
It's almost like a gender.
Yeah. I felt like maybe she's having a girl.
You're hilarious. Okay. What is your opinion about mixed ability sets or high ability sets in school? Do you think your children should be put in sets according to ability? I disagree, but you can say why.
Tell me why you disagree.
I just believe in being able to impart knowledge and collaboration. So I feel that if you're in a group with other students who don't think the same way, you can develop and grow. Growth mindset. That's me.
Yeah, I think you can make an argument for both sides, to be fair. And on some level, even if you don't do it with class by class, even within the classroom, like there's an element of setting that still happens, because you will have those who need to be stretched and challenged, because once you can see that they are more academically inclined and they're moving on a lot quicker than others, it's still your responsibility to meet every child's needs, and so you might need to give extra work, and sometimes those young people might now have to sit on that particular table type of thing, because on this table it's now holding them back, for instance. So there's an element of that, but then on the flip side, it's like, what is the mindset of those who are now at the bottom set? It's like, is there consistent emotional checkup on them in regards to continuing to build that growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset? Yes, you're here for now,
but that's what I mean.
But there's an opportunity for you to work hard and move forward. I think that's if that kind of communication is consistently there to show that if you work hard, and if there's actual evidence of young people who are moving up who have come from here and say, you know what, this is possible, and there's a consistency in actually showing that, because representation is key. So, James has gone up. Swear down, like, you know what I mean? It's like, I need to study. I need to, and then I can move up. So
it's encouraging.
Yeah, exactly.
Inspiring. Yeah, it's a tough one, you know, because like Emeka said, I can see both sides. I can really see both sides. My initial thought is I don't necessarily agree, because I tell my students this as well. Like, I really do believe that the best form of learning is when they learn off each other.
Yeah.
You know, yes, they're going to learn from me. And I'm going to deliver it in the best way possible. But it usually sticks when they learn off each other, when you pair group them, you know, you put them into groups and they do group activities, etc., etc. So, you know, absolutely, I disagree. But then on the other hand, it depends on the level sets as well, because you can have someone who is maybe an ESOL student, so, you know, English is not their first language, and then to put them in a group of students that are maybe, you know, like level 2 or level, that puts a lot of pressure on the teachers as well.
But then now we're saying that ESOL student needs to go in a low set, are we not?
No, not necessarily a low set, but I feel like we really need to identify the individual needs, because I always feel I don't want students leaving with nothing, or leaving like they failed, or setting them up to fail even, do you know what I mean? So we really need to recognise, you know, their strengths and what they can improve on.
Or in some subjects, that might be appropriate for having mixed ability classes, but in others, maybe where English is not their first language, not having it so mixed, so there's such a big difference.
I agree with what he's saying, because I've noticed as well that sometimes if you're a child who doesn't speak English fluently, you tend to get left in the class and everyone's overshadowing you. And then when you look at the results, I've done it before, looked at results just to see what students are getting, and the ESOL students will get low marks, but it's not that they don't understand it in terms of comprehension, well, in terms of the answers, if you know what I mean. It's just that they don't know how to articulate it. Or
because at the end of the day, language is not a mark of intelligence. Language is language, isn't it? So it's understanding that, you know, for you to now comprehend something in a different language, it's difficult, isn't it? But it doesn't make you smarter or less so, you know. But at the same time, it's like when we're talking about sets and when we're talking about all of these things, there might be a culture of, you know, let's placing students in certain places. For instance, if a child is in the middle set, but this top set is full up, how is there a culture where we're just going to keep them in the middle set because there is no space in the top set, for instance? Those questions. And I had a friend who he was setted to do a foundation paper, which means you're capped at a D. All right, and his mum fought hell to say we can't have that. This is, you know, that's the fixed mindset. You already said to my son that he can't get any more better than this. So she hired a tutor, and then she fought her way into making sure that he did a paper that didn't cap him at a D, and so he eventually ended up getting a B in GCSEs during those periods. And so it's understanding the limitations that these things are having on the young people themselves, and what's the impact long term as well.
Can I just add, just really quickly, you know how you said you put them in to do the work to get the B, the parents helped them get the B. I know a child who actually doesn't learn from being in the bottom set. She meets the teacher at lunchtime and she does the work with the teacher at lunchtime, because she's pointed out that the students in that set just disrupt the whole lesson. The behavior, the mindset is just they're all demoralized. So there's no faith, there's no hope. So she can't learn in that class.
And isn't that the commitment of the teacher to meet her at lunchtime? Like, I'll give up my lunchtime to sit with you.
Shout out to that teacher.
But she's now become a tool, a positive tool in a way, because now when she goes to the lesson, when all the children are disrupting, she sticks up for that teacher and says, stop. And she's powerful. She is actually a leader out of the group. So when she does that, they all kind of step back a bit, because she knows that teacher's gone the extra mile for her, which is nice.
Thank you, guys. I'm glad we had a good mixture of different views and opinion. Always good conversation. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the Teacher Surgery. We look forward to seeing you again next week. So do as they do, and they tell you at the bottom to like, follow, subscribe, and share. So keep the conversation going, and I'll see you next week.